And this is the Citadel Gray Line, where we talk about all that goes on at the South Carolina Military College. Jon Rawl, joined by Jeff Hartsell of the Charleston Post and Courier. Glad to have you back here. If you would like to get in touch with our program, if you're following us right now on Facebook Live, we encourage you. All you have to do is just reach out to us on Facebook Live with a question or a comment about all things Citadel Bulldog sports. And then if you also would like to get in touch with the program any other way, we have a telephone number, 843-779-8496 is how you can do that right here on the Bulldog Show. We have to recap the loss to Chattanooga for the Bulldog football team last week here on this week's show. We'll look forward to Western Carolina. We'll talk about basketball. We'll talk about the bookstore. And Jeff Hartsell, as we welcome you into the program, we got a lot to talk about, but I'll be honest with you, I love the Citadel, but I am not a very happy camper right now. I even have graphs, pie charts and such to show and help explain why I'm not in the best of moods right now. But hopefully, Jeff Hartsell, you're in a good mood.
I'm in a fine mood. What's under your skin, John?
Losing, bad headlines, and more. We'll get to all that. But Jeff, and not just losing to a certain opponent 3 straight years by 1 point. And, Jeff, it was deja vu all over again in Charleston against the Chattanooga Mocs, losing in overtime when that other team went for 2 for the win.
That is correct. 25-24 loss in overtime on Saturday at Johnson Hagood Stadium. And once again, the Citadel dug themselves an early hole, then battled valiantly to get back in the game, only to come up short in the end. And that formula is getting old for Brent Thompson, the players, and Citadel fans, I'm sure.
Thus, people like me getting a little bit upset. Jeff, before the game, and I hate to talk about things off the field, but this was a big story you broke on Friday that had to have had an impact on the game. Tell us about what you discovered, what you wrote about in the Post and Courier.
Well, I think it did cast a bit of a pall over the game. Late last week, Citadel told me that 37 players had been reported for making improper purchases at the campus bookstore. Now, scholarship athletes are limited by the NCAA and what they can spend their scholarship money on. And electronics and that kind of thing does not fall in that category. It's strictly for books. So we've seen other schools have this issue in the past, including Charleston Southern, and I found a case at the University of San Francisco that was very similar a few years ago. So 37 Citadel athletes across several sports, most of them in football. 33 of them will have to undergo some sort of suspension. The other 4, the amounts they spent were so small that they are allowed to just pay back the money and not undergo a suspension. So what the Citadel football team is going to do is suspend 4 players at a time over the rest of the season until the 26 players that face suspension on the football team serve their suspension. So 4 at a time over the rest of the season. Of course, obviously, if they suspended them all at once, they wouldn't be able to play the game. Mm-hmm. So that's what the situation is right now. The Citadel says they had a system in place that would flag these sort of improper purchases by athletes in the past. The bookstore is under a new vendor this year, and apparently the system did not translate over to the new vendor, and thus the athletes were able to make these purchases without them being flagged. Now, they are told each year what they can and cannot buy with their scholarship money. So the fact that the system did not work is really no excuse for what happened. The players are told each year, the Citadel says, about what they can and cannot buy with their scholarship money. And the money is on, you might be more familiar with this. I don't know if they had it back in your day. They call it a 1 card now. It's their student ID, and apparently their school money is loaded up on the card, and that's how they can spend money at the bookstore, to get a haircut, et cetera, et cetera. So that's the situation now. The Citadel tells me they do not expect further punishment from the NCAA, no vacating of victories or anything like that. So that's where we stand right now. So the football team will be -4 players each week going forward, and some of them are starters. Some of them are names that Citadel fans would know. So my plan is to each week I will publish who those 4 players are. I'm not going to put out a big list at one time.
But they're not telling you who these are. You kind of have to figure some stuff out.
I know who they are.
Oh, you do? Okay. I thought you had to deduct. And that's a recurring theme. We're going to do some math on this week's Citadel Gray Line, and Jeff used the buzzword. And you learn this as a little knobby at the Citadel, no excuse. As Jeff said, these guys had no excuse to do what they did in the bookstore. Very, very black eye, especially when people like us, or me in particular, have delighted in the bookstore woes of other schools. And here we are at the Citadel going through something pretty similar, if not, I don't know all the details, but that's no excuse. Jeff, when we talk about another story you wrote here, more in line with the game, and we're using math and no excuse again, you wrote about how Brent Thompson said he only used 30 players in this game against Chattanooga?
30 players. I was surprised, too. The participation, each game report, I hold one up here.
Let's go in closer on that. Let's give Jeff the full view. All right, here we go.
The box score of the game includes a participation chart, which are not always accurate because it's tough to track every player who plays in a game. And usually they go through the film after the game and adjust the participation chart. But the participation chart on Saturday showed 38 Citadel players participating, which is a low number right there. And then Brent Thompson said on Monday it was actually 30. And you count the kicker, the holder, the punter, the long snapper, that leaves about 26 position players. Of course, you have 22 starters. That's 4 reserves that played in the game. Wow, that's not very many at all. And according to the participation chart, Chattanooga used 49 players. We don't know if that's accurate or not, but it gives a general idea of how many played in the game. And I went back and looked at some box scores from last year, and a normal number is in the 50s for players that participate in a game. So 30 is a very low number, and it just shows, in my opinion, the natural rhythms of football in the fall, the academic calendar. Your roster is at its strongest in the fall. When the freshmen come in, your returning players are there. Nobody's graduated early yet in December. So your roster naturally is the strongest in the fall. And now the Citadel has COVID to deal with. There's some team suspensions for violation of team rules that are being served right now. And then you have the suspensions for the bookstore right now. And you pile all that together, and the roster is very small right now. But Brent Thompson says they are not in danger of falling below the SoCon minimums to play during the spring, which is 53 players total, 7 offensive linemen, 6 defensive linemen, and 2 quarterbacks you have to have. But that's just a guideline. And we saw last week Wofford fell below the 6-player minimum on the defensive line, and they chose to ask for their game to be postponed against East Tennessee State. Now, what the Citadel would do if they fell into that situation, I don't know. But Brent Thompson sort of indicated that they would mix and match position groups and do everything they could to play and not ask to have a game postponed.
Jeff, I don't want to put words into your mouth or into Brent Thompson's mouth, but gathering and reading through the tea leaves, it seemed to me as if it just seemed to me that Coach Thompson and the Bulldog football team is not really prioritizing this spring football season. They're making some things happen in spring to better help them in the fall. Am I reading that correctly?
I think every coach is doing that. I talked to Rusty Wright, Chattanooga's coach, after the game, I said, Coach, why'd you choose to go for 2 there in overtime? He said, it was time to get on the bus and get this game over with. The spring is different from the fall, he said. We want to play the game with as few plays as possible, keep everybody healthy, and get them to the fall in good shape. So he went for 2. He was willing to accept victory or defeat at that point. He wanted to get the game over. And, of course, they ran a great play, a little shovel pass to the tight end, and won the game. If Brent Thompson had the same attitude, he might have gone for 2 when the Citadel scored late in regulation or when they scored in overtime to take the lead. But he did not. Rusty Wright did, and that's the way the game turned out.
Okay. All right. Well, I'm glad I kind of read through that, and I'm glad you helped clarify that. But, yes, it'd be nice to win a championship, and when you're 0-2 in the SoCon already, it's looking almost impossible that you can come back and compete and win it this year.
That's the dilemma here that the coaches face. I don't think many of them are fired up for spring football, but there's a championship and a playoff berth on the line. So how do you balance that with keeping your guys healthy with an eye toward the fall, which I think most people view as a real season? Not that this one isn't, but there's a lot to juggle here in spring football.
Lots of juggle. We'll get through it all here on today's Citadel Gray Line. Again, we appreciate everybody tuning in and being a part of the program as we do discuss the Dogs. And if you want to be a part, 843-779-8496. A lot of you are watching us right now on Facebook Live on our broadcast there. If you question or comment about the Citadel, we welcome that in. And again, this is a show going back to our theme here this week, losing and no excuses is some of it. And I actually put my Citadel business degree to work here. You're going to see my artwork here from a business perspective in just a second. But we do need to talk about the football game that was played at Johnson Hagood Stadium. Roughly 3,000 or so souls in attendance at the General for this one. A beautiful day. Jeff, I think some of the people were even sporting short-sleeve shirts.
Yeah, it's different in the spring, isn't it? But you look at these first 2 games that the Citadel's played, and really the main difference in the first 2 games is the first play of the game.
Yes. Again, no excuse, Jeff. How in the heck can you have 2 straight games with the first play being a touchdown?
And very similar plays, 75-yard passes to the tight end over the middle. Mercer pulled it off, and then Chattanooga did the same thing on Saturday. The Citadel loses by 1 point against Chattanooga. Against Mercer, they got it to within a touchdown late in the game before the onside kick was returned. So really the big difference in both games is the first play of the game. And for it to happen once is bad enough. Twice in a row, as you say, no excuse.
Sir, no excuse.
And if Western Carolina doesn't throw to the tight end over the middle on the first play this week, I think their offensive coordinator should be fired.
I saw somebody put that out on the social media.
And on the other hand, the Citadel needs to tackle the tight end on the first play before he can catch the ball. So if they can survive the first play this week against Western, maybe they'll have a chance to win a game.
Rough start. Bad first half. Embarrassment. And absolute embarrassment. I think Brent Thompson even echoed that. To his team's credit, they did fight back in the second half.
Right. That was after the Mercer game that he used the word embarrassing. I think they only played 1 bad quarter against Chattanooga. So the last 3 were pretty darn good, especially when you consider that they only have 30 players. The defense really stepped up in the second half, created a couple of turnovers that helped the Bulldogs get back in the game. There you see one, the interception by Parrish Gordon. So Jalen Adams, the quarterback, there you see him on a long run. He's getting better every week. No turnovers this week with a freshman fullback starting his first game. So that's to their credit as well. Cooper Wallace has shown some real potential at slot back. So this spring is going to pay off for the Citadel in the fall. It's just a matter of how painful it's going to be, these growing pains.
Jeff,
now.
You left off a newcomer, the pride of Beacon Country from Spartanburg, Nathan Storch, getting some reps this past weekend.
I mentioned him. He's the true freshman fullback who started his first game. I had never heard, I confess, of Nathan Storch before Saturday, and that's very rare. I'm usually pretty familiar with at least the starters, but I had never heard of Nathan. He carried 19 times for 50 yards, did not fumble. Brent Thompson said he did not go the wrong way one time, and he blocked pretty well also. So that will help come the fall. It looks like I think Clay Harris will be out again this week at fullback, and so will Willie Eubanks, the All-American linebacker who hurt his left arm or shoulder against Chattanooga. He will not play this week. So a limited roster and some injuries as well.
Tough loss. I saw that injury to Eubanks there in the second half, and he didn't come back in. And the SoCon preseason Defensive Player of the Year, a big loss heading into Cullowhee this weekend.
It is, and what the Citadel had to do was move safety Andy Davis down to the middle linebacker and put in Caleb DeVoe in the secondary. And the secondary has had its problems this year, no question about it. They really miss Chris Beverly, who was out with some family COVID issues, and also Sean Thomas Faulkner, the fine safety who graduated and moved on with his professional career this year. So really missing those two guys in the secondary.
Yeah, tough losses. You've written about that extensively. By the way, Jeff on Twitter is @Jeff_ from the PC. Dogs did fight back, as we said, took it into overtime, and they got the ball first. I always think it's better, of course, if the coin goes your way, that you get the chance to go second in overtime. And unfortunately, Chattanooga won the toss, and they took the ball second. And as we said, for the second straight time in Charleston, it was deja vu all over again as the Mocs, they got their touchdown on really a play where the Citadel thought they had won the game. On a fourth down, Citadel called for a pass interference in the end zone, and that could have ended the game if that had not been called.
And it was a good call. The receiver was grabbed around the waist by the defensive back on 4th and goal, or 4th and 10 in that situation. So, yeah, that would have been the ball game if they could have avoided that penalty, but they did not. And then the Mocs scored. And after a couple of timeouts on each side, the Mocs went for 2 and ran a really well-designed, well-executed play, that shovel pass to the tight end up the middle. And that was the ball game. As you mentioned, the second time in a row, Chattanooga's won on a 2-point try in overtime at Johnson Hagood Stadium.
And don't forget, in 2019, you and I were there in Chattanooga. It was a miracle comeback for Chattanooga to have a quarterback scramble in the closing seconds and walk away with a 1-point victory in that one. It's not been fun playing those Mocs out of Hamilton County, Tennessee here lately.
No, always good games with Chattanooga. And all of a sudden, the Citadels lost 8 games in a row. It's hard to realize that because they've been chopped up so much in the fall and the spring, but it's been since November 2019 that they won a game. Of course, 3 of their losses in the fall were to FBS teams, including number 1 Clemson. Mm-hmm. So, little bit of an asterisk there. You only usually play just 1 FBS team a year, not 3 in one fall. But still, it's been a very long time since they won a game, and they need to win at Western Carolina, which also is winless in the fall and spring. So a good chance for the Citadel to break this skid and maybe turn a corner here.
We sure hope so. We've got a game against Western Carolina we'll tell you about. The Dogs back on the road in the SoCon. We've got basketball to talk about, a little baseball to talk about. Jeff, are you ready for me to continue the fun of why I may not be I may be having Citadel Blue, but it's really more of the Citadel Blues here this week?
Well, unburden yourself, John. Let's hear it.
All right, I'll do it. But first, let me remind everybody that Citadel Gray Line is presented in part by IPS Packaging and Automation, a name you can trust. Since 1976, IPS Packaging and Automation has been providing manufacturers and e-commerce companies with the very best packaging products and automation in the industry. IPS, Citadel led, they offer a complete line of packaging products from stretch films and 3M tapes to corrugated boxes, strapping, and automation. IPS Packaging and Automation will analyze and streamline your current methods to improve your packaging process. Give them a call, 800-277-7007 to learn more, or visit them on the web at ipack.com. IPS Packaging and Automation is a proud supporter of Citadel Athletics. And let me give everybody a little public service announcement here. And the reason I do that is because I've got a prop to brag about here for a second. In this prop, Jeff, you ready for this one? It is a clock.
I am.
It's a clock. And this is a friendly reminder. Well, let me get that right. This is a friendly reminder you got to turn your clocks forward here on Sunday. So this clock here I think is a little bit off, but that's my fault. What a beautiful clock, you ask or you say. Yes, it is. And this is from BigRedPalmetto.store. And we're going to have a trivia question, a knob knowledge trivia question from BigRedPalmetto.store that we'll be asking momentarily, and get those fingers ready to text your response when we have a non-athletic question. I had to take a break from athletics here on the trivia question this week. The Citadel Blues has gotten the best of me. But I do want to say thanks to BigRedPalmetto.store. We had a trivia question last week, a knob knowledge question, and we had a winner, and I want to congratulate Jim Kersey, who was watching and typed up the answer to us and the answer to last week's trivia question. Well, remember, we had Tyler Renew on with us last week, a great Citadel running back in the 2014, 15, 16 years. And our trivia question was running back related. Tyler, of course, was part of 2 Southern Conference championship teams in the backfield. Then you had Travis Jervey and Everett Sands, part of the 1992 championship team there in the backfield for the Citadel. Who was the star running back on the Citadel's other lone SoCon championship? I think it was 1961 was the season, and we wanted to know who that running back was, who went on to become the first Citadel football player to ever be invited to the Senior Bowl in Mobile. And Jim was able to let us know the answer to that, and the answer was from the class of 1962. The late Early Eastburn he's a Citadel Hall of Famer, and Mr. Eastburn was part of those great Southern Conference teams of the early 1960s. And so I congratulate Jim Kersey with the correct knob knowledge answer from last week. And again, we'll have another knob knowledge trivia question coming up in just a second. So Jeff, as I told you, I brought some nice ammunition to strengthen my argument here today. And I have to thank, speaking of the Citadel, Captain Pokrivka there in the business department when I was a cadet. I guess it was in his business stats class that I took advantage of things like this, although we didn't have Microsoft Excel back in those days. Jeff, are you ready for the big unveil here of what I've been working on so hard?
I am ready.
All right, here we go.
Up to the hype.
Yeah, here we go. SoCon wins. Look at that beautiful piece of business artwork. Now, what is that, you ask, Jeff? Year 1, year 2, year 3. I have to use different years because these are your 3 major men's sports teams at the Citadel, and to line them up appropriately, you can't use the exact same calendar year because we haven't had necessarily full seasons in some of these sports. So there you see year 1, which is the furthest year back in blue, is Citadel football. So that would have been in the 2017 season was the last year Citadel football had a complete season, and they were a little bit under 400 that year. I think they were 3-something with their wins, and these are only games played in the Southern Conference. In 2018, Brent Thompson's team went on to be a 500 ball club. In 2019, they were a 500 ball club. So that's correct. Citadel football. Then you have the gray is Citadel baseball. And the reason I use 3 years here is to show that the 3 head coaches at the Citadel have had 3 full years in. I think Skoll came in 2017, so this would have been his first year, second year, third year. Last year, his season got shortened and didn't even really count. But Skoll in baseball had right there in the 300 range in his first year. Second year wasn't much better. And then in 2019, he went down in his SoCon wins. And then, Lord knows I don't have to tell you who this is. In orange, it's Citadel Bulldog basketball, which in 2018, I think it was, they had roughly 20% winning. And then 2019, or 2020 season rather, they had 0 wins in SoCon play. And then this year, since we have finished that season, we went ahead and tallied up, and I think they've won close to almost 40% of their games in 2020 and 2021. A very ugly illustration of how things are with the Citadel athletic program's three major sports right now. And I'm not trying to pick on anybody. I'm just trying to show you the facts. That is the facts there of wins. And if wins are important, this is definitely a subpar athletic program in these three major sports.
Well, it's hard to argue with your graph there, so I won't try.
No, I mean, I know at the Citadel it's more than just wins and losses, but I only took Southern Conference teams, the teams,
Right.
the schools that are like the Citadel, okay? And I don't know if there's another team in all of the conference that has their three
Well,
male programs all under 500.
I don't know how much like the Citadel other teams in the SoCon are. Chattanooga had 25 transfers on their roster Saturday. That won't happen at the Citadel or at VMI or really at Wofford or Furman. So there is a wide variety of academic institutions in the Southern Conference. We'll put it that way.
Yeah.
Some of them will go the transfer portal. The Citadel, it can do it with graduate transfers because they have a graduate school.
And I
So
don't
that's
like that,
helped
Jeff.
invest-
I know that coaches might not want to hear it, but I don't like to see graduate transfers getting a lot of playing time. I just feel like that's not fair to the guys who went through the fourth class system and they're out there fighting to get on the team. And these guys are one and done. I call them carpetbaggers because they come looking for an opportunity and then they're gone. I just don't think it's fair. Is it legal? Of course, but I just don't like it as a fan.
Well, you're right. I would disagree with that characterization. I think Tyler Moff has come into the Citadel and bought in fully with what the Citadel's about, and I think Lou Stallworth did that, and Baptiste last year on the basketball team. I think they found some good young men to come in basketball and help out, and I think the other players are happy to have the help.
Again, if the players that are not getting the playing time are perfectly fine with it, who am I to judge? But boy, it just
they want to win.
Okay.
And Tyler Moff and Lou Stallworth help them win. So and that's the reality of college sports now. And if you can't take any transfers at all, then you're going to have even a tougher time in competing. Now, VMI was able to have a good season in basketball this year without taking transfers. And they've lost some seniors now to the transfer portal who are going to move on for their graduate year and play elsewhere. So that's just a reality of college sports right now. I don't have a big problem with it. Like I said, I think Duger Balcom has found some good young men to come in and play that point guard position out of necessity. They haven't had anybody, and maybe that's a fault of Balcom's recruiting, not able to find a high school guard who could come in and play SoCon level basketball as a starter. Now, Rudy Fitzgibbons has done a good job, and Jerry Higgins as reserve guards, but they aren't, in my opinion, ready to be a starting point guard in the SoCon. So they've had to go elsewhere to find those guys. But your opinion as a fan is perfectly valid too.
Yeah, and again, I yield to the players who aren't getting that playing time. If they're perfectly fine sitting on a bench and they want to win, if it's that important, I guess my opinion doesn't matter. And a part of my jealousy or part of my anger, Jeff, is you just mentioned VMI. VMI is about as close as you can get to the Citadel, and I don't think they've ever had a transfer because I don't think they have a graduate school there. So you have to be a cadet at VMI, and VMI's, I think, trending upward, and the Citadel is, as we just saw, trending, at least hovering or trending downward.
Well, they trended downward last year, way down. They trended up this year. I don't think you can argue with that.
In what sport?
Basketball.
Okay.
They won 0 conference games last year. They won 5 this year. They didn't get to play the worst team in the league at all. They were supposed to play San twice, did not get to play them at all. So that could have been 7 conference wins. They finished with a winning record for the first time since Ed Conroy's team in 2008 and 9. Now, 4 of those games were against non-Division I teams. They usually only play 2 or 3, but the COVID schedule canceled games against Duke and Illinois, so he had to find somebody to play. So, Is basketball where Duger Balcom would like it to be? No. And the Citadel has a decision coming up. His contract runs out next month. I think they're going to re-sign him. I don't know for sure. That decision hasn't been made. But they showed some progress this year. If Hayden Brown and Caden Rice and Tyler Moff all come back next year, they could have a strong team and a team that could compete in the upper division of the SoCon. I expect Tyler Moff to come back. I don't know about Hayden Brown and Caden Rice. They could have opportunities to play elsewhere in their graduate year, which is perfectly their right. If they want to test themselves at a little bit higher level of basketball, more power to them. But they have the opportunity to come back because this COVID year did not count against their eligibility.
Yeah. Well, as I mentioned, that graph that I created was just to show wins and losses. That's not me or any of us watching likely up to us to make coaching changes. That's for other people. But that's the losses. And I have to be honest, I don't know of another college basketball coach in the country who can go 0-18 and survive and coach another year. And Balcom was able to do that. So he's doing a good job, at least on that front.
That's because the Citadel doesn't fire coaches. They live up to their contract. When the contract runs out, then a decision is made. But they don't fire them. I think it's a point of honor, for lack of a better term, and financial reality. They can't afford to pay off coaches before the end of their contract.
And that's another thing I wanted to bring up here. I'm not just totally picking on the athletic department or the coaches. We don't have a lot of money, Jeff. We never have had zillions of dollars floating around. We, unfortunately, because I guess we're a military school, we've never had people go on from the Citadel and strike oil and become so successful they don't know what to do with it. I just read the other day, Jeff, that another SoCon team within our conference who had already been blessed by their most famous alum, he just decided to give them another $20 million, and that was Jerry Richardson giving his money to Wofford. I think he's given them $200 million, I think.
Yeah, and well, Mike Capaccio would tell you that Citadel has plenty of generous donors that have stepped forward and helped the school out. You look at that artificial turf over there. That's from a donor who generously helped out. So I don't think the problem is not having wealthy or generous donors. I think it's just the reality of a school, the Citadel size, and the COVID year has not helped the bottom line. And you don't want to have to depend on somebody giving you $100 million to. It would be nice, but you need to make your own way as an athletic department, and that's what the Citadel has done. They operate within the parameters of what they can do. Mm-hmm. And that means they don't fire coaches before their contracts are up. So Brent Thompson, I believe, is signed through 2023, and the same with Tony Skoll. And Duger Balcom's contract is up next month, and so a decision is coming soon on what they will do about that.
I see. Well, speaking of money, and that certainly would help things out, always money's good for anything. I just got my email that the Citadel Brigadier Foundation's Giving Day is coming up in just a handful of days. So do like me and maybe like you and give whatever amount is okay. If everybody gave something, it would help for sure and maybe get us a little bit closer to some of these peer schools and all the riches that they've been blessed with. Money's part of it. Unfortunately, the Citadel being in a small conference like the Southern Conference, they don't benefit from the $40 million a year contracts like the SEC network offers. So you have to do your best. Jeff Hartsell's got it all covered, though, at the Citadel, going to Board of Visitors meetings and being there on the loop for breaking information and more. So that's what's going on. Citadel basketball, as you mentioned, their season did come to an end. Tough loss to UNCG in the second game they played. They did get a victory against Western Carolina there at the Hannah's Cherokee Center in Asheville. And so they didn't go to Asheville and walk away without any wins. They were able to get that. Then, as you said, players like Hayden Brown and Caden Rice with decisions of their own to make whether they want to come back to play for the Citadel Bulldog basketball team.
Right. They scored 68 points in the second half against Western Carolina, scored 100 for the game. really good performance. And then they pushed UNCG, which ended up winning the tournament and will go to the NCAA tournament as the SoCon champion, pushed them to the final minute on Saturday. So, a good showing in the tournament. They finished at 13-12, which, as we mentioned, is their first winning record in 12 years or so. So, I think there's some arguments that Dugard Balcom can make in his favor of extending his contract. His overall record certainly falls in line with the tradition of Citadel basketball, which has only had 2 20-win seasons in its entire history. So he's not far off from the average performance of a Citadel coach. But Citadel fans shouldn't expect average performance. They should expect, a little bit more, I think. And that's a fair point.
We did get a question in, Jeff, this from Adam Alley on our Facebook page, and he asked, is Coach Thompson on the hot seat this coming fall?
Well, I think he could be. A lot depends on how they do the rest of the spring. They need to get some wins here, even though it's just spring football. But yeah, he 8 losses in a row. Some of the off the field issues that they've had, some of them COVID related, which you can understand, but some of them not COVID related. So yeah, I think he could be on the hot seat next year. But as we've said, he signed through, I think it's 2023. I just got their contract, so I'll have to check again. And the Citadel does not fire coaches, or they haven't historically, before their contracts are up. So the seat could get hot, but he'll probably stay in it until the end of his contract.
Again, you said through 2023 season, so he would have the 21, 22, and 23 seasons to complete before.
No, I think it's 21 and 22 seasons, and then in 23, it's up. But I'll have to check on that. Don't hold me to that.
All right. Well, you expect him back in the fall for sure. So that is a good question coming in from Adam Alexander Alley on our Facebook page. Again, if you have a question, you're certainly welcome to fire away there on the page or give us a call on our Charleston area number, 843-779-8496. It's how you can get in touch with all of us at the Citadel Gray Line. All right, Jeff. Again, I said I'm not in the best of moods this week, as if it was already tough to lose a heartbreaking game to the Chattanooga Mocs on the football field on Saturday. The Citadel, at the same time, had a basketball game of some consequence because who knows, they could have beat UNCG. You had 2 games going on at the exact same time, and then later that day, the Citadel played baseball against North Carolina A&T, and the Bulldogs of Tony Skoll dropped that series to the Aggies, an HBCU team, a small school like the Citadel, not necessarily a baseball powerhouse. And now this, I think, marks the 3rd straight weekend the Citadel has lost a baseball series to start the new season.
Well, North Carolina A&T is traditionally a pretty good program among HBCUs. Yeah. They might even be the top. I'm not sure how HBCU baseball.
I think Bethune-Cookman's pretty good.
Yeah. But North Carolina A&T has also been pretty good. They've made some appearances in the NCAA tournament. So, yeah, but still, you're right. They have not played the quality ball I think Tony Skoll was expecting this year. Their new pitcher, Jake Polarsky, the new Friday night starter, he's had 1 good outing and 2 very rough ones so far. And they've not played as well in the field as I know Tony Skoll would expect. They are hitting the ball better than Citadel teams of recent vintage. So still time to get this thing turned around. Big game this week against the Gamecocks, and then they'll start SoCon play soon, and that will really tell the tale how they do in the SoCon.
All right, and again, the Gamecock game midweekend at Joe Riley Park with the, I believe, undefeated South Carolina Gamecocks coming into Charleston.
They are undefeated, off to a great start and really hitting the hide off the ball. Wes Clark, one of the hottest players in the country, and pitching staff full of 90-mile-per-hour arms. So it looks like Mark Kingston has gotten Gamecock baseball turn around just in time to play the Citadel.
Yeah, sounds right, right. And I like when this game's played more in April. This year, of course, things have totally gone berserk with the scheduling, and so this game they're going to be in Colombia.
They're going to play USC 3 times. They're
are
going to play USC at least 3 times, Tony School said. And with COVID, you never know. They might schedule a 4th game if some games fall through. So they're going to play in Colombia twice and down here at the Joe this week.
All right. Let's go to our knob-knowledge question, and then we'll wrap things up talking about this weekend's matchup in Cullowhee. But let me tell you that we have our knob-knowledge question this week presented by BigRedPalmetto.store. And our knob-knowledge question, if you want to fire away with your answer, is we have Corps Day coming up in just a few days. Jeff, that's the birthday of the Citadel and the Arsenal in Colombia. Back in 1843, the cadets reported on March 20th, 1843, as the school got going, and that's recognized each year with Corps Day. By the way, Corps Day this year, March 27th. That's also going to be a very busy day on the Citadel campus. It will be Recognition Day, March 27th, and the Sanford Bulldogs will be in town to take on the Citadel football team. So you got Corps Day and a football game all on March 27th. Sounds pretty exciting to me. This week's knob-knowledge question, presented by BigRedPalmetto.store. Can you name the governor of South Carolina who first conceived of converting the Arsenal in Columbia and the Citadel in downtown Charleston, the building of the Citadel, converting these two properties into military academies? If you can tell me who the South Carolina governor was back in 1842, roughly, who came up with the idea of doing that, we'll send you a $25 gift certificate to BigRedPalmetto.store, and you will be all over your knob knowledge if you know that answer. Just text us 843-779-8496. First correct text in is the winner, 843-779-8496. Let me know who the governor was of South Carolina, helped convert the Arsenal and the Citadel into military academies. And Jeff, I know you're all into knob knowledge yourself. Do you know what became of the Arsenal in Colombia?
I do not.
Oh, Lord. Well, first of all, when Sherman's troops came through Colombia in 1865, they burnt down most of the buildings at the Arsenal, but they left the officers' quarters. And today, Jeff Hartsell, the officers' quarters of the Arsenal is the governor's mansion of South Carolina.
I did not know that.
In fact, if you ever go to the grounds there north of downtown Columbia, it kind of looks like a college campus, a military-type campus. And that's because at one time it was the Arsenal, of which if you were going to be a knob at the Citadel, you went to Columbia your first year, and you were at the Arsenal, and then after you finished your first year, they sent you on down to the big house in Charleston, and that's where you wrapped up your second, third, and fourth years. Then the Civil War came and everything got messed up. But yeah, the remnant of the Arsenal is South Carolina's governor's mansion, a beautiful property that you can go tour in most circumstances. I don't know what the current situation is, but you might even see Foghorn Leghorn there, Jeff.
Governor Foghorn Leghorn.
Yeah.
I was going to guess that the Arsenal was the IHOP on Assembly Street, but I guess
I don't know about
that. Was wrong.
I don't know about that. No, this is a really neat little neighborhood. I believe it's called Arsenal Hill, is that section of Columbia. But pretty neat. And if you know who that governor was, let us know. We'll send you that BigRedPalmetto.store gift certificate. 843-779-8496 is how you can win. All right, let's wrap things up with what's going on at the Citadel this weekend and anything else Citadel football-wise with our guy right there on the Citadel blue and white beat, Jeff Hartsell, Charleston Post and Courier. The Dogs back on the road this week to Cullowhee. I think this would be a winnable game. Jeff, what say you?
I say it's a winnable game, and it's also a must-win game. Going up to Cullowhee and losing to an 0-6 Western Carolina team would be bottoming out, in my opinion. So we'll see what happens on that first play. If they can avoid giving up a touchdown on the first play, I predict a Citadel victory.
Jeff Hartsell with the kind of low bar here this week. Just if they can stop them, they could win. But yeah, I don't know what the odds makers in Vegas have on the Citadel successfully keeping that first play from going for a touchdown. But Please, please, please. As you said, cheat if you have to. Get a penalty. Tackle that tight end if you have to keep them from scoring.
Anything other than a touchdown.
Yeah. Now, I saw Western Carolina play that first week against Furman. I thought they kind of held it in there with Furman, although Furman looks a little shaky. They barely beat Samford this week. They're 1-1 in SoCon play. Western Carolina, as I said, this is a game the Citadel ought to win.
Yeah, 0-6 in the fall and spring, and let's see, they lost last week 30-7 to VMI, which is 2-0 in the SoCon.
Yeah.
This year they lost 55-27 to Samford and 35-7 to Furman. So apparently the Catamount defense has some issues.
And as I said to start the show, I'm kind of bitter this week, and my bitterness is due in part to VMI. My goodness, they're 2-0. They hold the Silver Shako. Wackenheim, I think, is doing a pretty darn good job there in Lexington, and so kudos to the Cadets.
Their basketball coach was the SoCon Coach of the Year, well-deserved for Dan Earl. So VMI's got it rolling up there, and that, as you point out, that's not music to the ears of Citadel fans.
Yeah, just stab me while I'm running from you here.
Kick you while you're down.
Kick me when I'm down. Yeah, I really appreciate that. But again, way to go VMI. And again, they don't have that graduate program. They don't. They're smaller than the Citadel, for goodness sakes. Geesh.
They're in Lexington, Virginia, and Citadel's in Charleston. So,
Hey.
all the chips are in the Citadel's favor.
Yeah.
And we'll point out that VMI's quarterback, he's playing this spring, and then he's going to transfer and play at Maryland next fall. So, got some good things going on at VMI.
Hey, that might be the best news I've heard. They got a guy leaving. That's good. Hopefully he'll get out of there before the Citadel plays them in Lexington here very soon. All right, game this weekend is going to be, what was it, a 1 o'clock kick?
1 o'clock kick in Cullowhee, North Carolina, Whitmire Stadium.
One of my favorite places to see a football game. Usually in the fall. Not sure how exciting it'll be this weekend, but all of you traveling there, we'll see if we can't get Brent Thompson's team on the right track. Jeff, anything else sports-wise before we get out of here?
No, just be careful when you're in that bookstore.
Ooh, man, that's tough. But again, in normal circumstances, I do know that the Citadel did transfer companies. They were with Barnes & Noble, and now they're with another company. So there was literally a software glitch.
They changed vendors, and apparently the fail-safe system did not translate over. But as we said, really not an excuse.
No excuse. Our theme this week. And Jeff, you mentioned it's called a one card now. Back in the day, that was called a QM card, quartermaster card, and it was good for use at the Citadel bookstore for books, but you couldn't buy tobacco. They used to sell snuff and things like that at the bookstore. I don't think you could use it for that, and you could also use it over at the cadet store. And I'm not the only person that did this. There was at least one time that I used that QM card to purchase Citadel things for my parents, like as a Christmas present. I think I got my dad a knob hat one time, and he kind of bought it himself. So not necessarily the most ethical thing, but I wasn't breaking a law. And, it was
Were you a varsity athlete?
Pardon me?
Were you a varsity athlete?
No, not at all. No.
So no NCAA rules were violated.
No, but I think you can do it. I mean, what I did was not a violation. It just was basically I'm using my parents' money to buy them a present. And I'm not the only one. A lot of people did that because there was some cool stuff they sell in the cadet store. They got the little white shirts and sweatshirts, and I'm sure many a cadet has bought a sweatshirt, one of those nice Russell brand sweatshirts for their lady or boyfriend or whatever the case might be.
Certainly.
And they didn't really have to, because you can't work as a cadet. Other than I did have the one job you could have on campus when I was a senior. I got to deliver the state newspaper inside the barracks, and I was a newspaper delivery man. Yeah, they deliver in the old days, and they probably still do. The state newspaper and the Post and Courier were both sold in the barracks. And so the key was usually it was a senior. It got passed down. There was one senior in each battalion, and if you were lucky enough to get that gig, you went around, and the key was to go as early as you could in the new school year, and you'd go knock on the doors of the cadets, and usually it was the knobs, the freshmen, and if you were the first one in their door and said, "Hey, I'm with the newspaper, you want to buy a subscription?" They were like, "Yes, sir," because they were scared to tell you no, right? And so the key was to get to that room before the Post and Courier guy went to the room knocking and wanting a subscription.
I can't tell you how shocked and appalled I am that you were delivering the state newspaper in Charleston.
It was the best, and I delivered papers outside of the Citadel days, and it was the best gig I've ever had because it literally, Jeff, it took me about 3 minutes to run the newspaper route because you just walk around and throw them out and you're done. And even on the weekend, you didn't even have to deliver on the weekend. You just left them because we're a school with an honor code. You left the amount of newspapers out by the Sally Port, and you didn't have to go deliver them on the weekend. You got paid for it. Pretty good gig. And so you can't blame Citadel cadets on the demise of newspapers. They were supporting them back in the day, and chances are the state newspaper is still being delivered on campus. But get the Post and Courier because I guarantee you have to find a microscope in the state newspaper to find anything about the Citadel or, frankly, any of the other small colleges in South Carolina. They could care less about South Carolina's military college, unless it's a bad story, of course.
Did you know that we have a Furman beat writer at the Post and Courier this spring?
Ooh.
Okay. Mr. Josh Needleman, who covers Clemson for us, has graciously agreed to cover Furman football this spring.
That's because the Post and Courier is the only newspaper in the world that's actually progressing right now. And they've added a Greenville bureau. You've got a Columbia bureau. You've got a Myrtle Beach bureau. Let me know when you get a Monk's Corner bureau. But, yeah.
We've got one of those. His name is David Shelton.
Oh, I was just kidding. Yeah, I guess you do because he does the Charleston Southern sports a lot. But, kudos to you.
We got Clemson, Carolina, the Citadel, Charleston Southern, Furman, and Coastal Carolina. We got them all covered at the Post and Courier. So, as they say, read all about it.
Again, kudos to the Pulitzer-winning Post and Courier for all the great work of people like Jeff Hartsell, because I know, Jeff, it hasn't been easy. These last 20 years have been a tough thing for everybody in media, and the Post and Courier has, it appears, weathered the storm and doing great things. And I can't thank you as a fan to the Post and Courier, which at one time had me as a columnist there in the 90s. I appreciate what they've done to keep you on and keep the Citadel front and center as much as they possibly can. And we need that. We desperately need that as fans of the Citadel. So thank you, Post and Courier. You can share this with your boss if you'd like.
Well, I thank them for keeping me on, too.
Yeah, I think so, too. Jeff, and of course you do more than just football and Citadel sports. You've got tennis coming up, some golf.
We've got the Volvo Car Open over here on Daniel Island coming up in April, and the PGA Championship at the Ocean Course in May. So two big events coming up in the Charleston area this spring on top of football, baseball, and basketball season just ended. So this spring is crazy for really all colleges.
And again, postandcourier.com is the website. Jeff, thank you very much. We appreciate all that you have done this week, and we look forward to talking about what happens in Cullowhee this coming Saturday.
Thank you so much, John.
All right, and we appreciate everybody for being on the Citadel Gray Line, a production of CRM Sports. We'll be right back here next week. Thanks for watching.